As Christians, should we believe in self-defense?
Persecution in America, we take our persecution for granted. Our persecution is really nothing. I don't think that I really even have any sort of grasp on what real persecution looks like.
Our flesh is going to say, do whatever to keep yourself safe, but that might not be what the Lord is saying. I trust myself to protect my family, so I'm going to equip myself to protect my family. If somebody's coming into my home and they are going to harm my wife or my child, or they're going to harm me, the best way that I can stop them from doing that is by utilizing a firearm.
Should Christians own firearms? What is up, fellas?
What's up?
We're here. We are now on the podcast. It has been literally like 3 years since Ernesto.
Did you look at the date?
No, I haven't. It's been like 3 years since Ernesto's been on a pod.
Dude, probably.
I've probably moved like 3 or 4 times since that podcast.
Minimum.
At least.
Yeah.
But I'm here with Ernesto, Micah. And today we're going to talk about self-defense. Probably get into firearms. Probably get into recent events.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Recent events.
All of them tie together.
Yeah. So the first question is, we're all Christians in this room.
Yeah.
So as Christians, should we believe in self-defense? And I come asking that question because I feel like the defense to saying that Christians should not act in self-defense, it comes from a verse in Matthew 5 where it says, "You have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also." So what do you think of that verse? Should Christians act in self-defense, or should they just freely take whatever kind of attack that is coming their way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say hugely disagree with this idea that Christians are to be doormats, per se. I think, that this is one verse in an entire book of scripture that we have that would kind of point to human life being sacred and worthwhile and worth something, even to being as magnificent and glorious as God. So to think that we should permit ourselves to just be a doormat or just take whatever is thrown at us, it doesn't really add up to me. I think this verse is probably comes out of a specific context, being insulted or persecuted, or maybe someone did something petty to you, but I don't think that this really applies to somebody breaking into your home with the intent to harm you or your family.
Got it.
Yeah, and you said it's Matthew 5?
Yes.
So what I think, if I'm recalling correctly, it could be absolutely wrong because I'm not good with Bible verses, but I think that was in the middle of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. He's talking to his disciples, but also large crowd of people, just showing them, the way that they should live. He was a good teacher at the time, well respected in his area. And so he's teaching these people, about the way that they should be operating as followers of God, and the way that their life should be holy and set apart, because then ultimately he knows that those followers are then going to take the witness of him, what he's done, and have to represent that to the whole world.
Yeah.
And so obviously that's one verse of the huge, meta-narrative of Scripture, but also within that context of the Sermon on the Mount. I think you look at the other verses around that, it says, a few verses later, it says, if a man asks you to go with him 1 mile, go with him 2. And so if you're kind of looking at the story and the lesson that Jesus is trying to paint the picture of there, I think the whole turn the other cheek is really about the witness that you're setting. And okay, if you're going to be a follower of me or just a follower of God, kind of a do-gooder in this world.
Yeah.
Is fighting against somebody that was oppressing you, somebody that was rude to you, somebody that was evil to you, fighting against them in every scenario, is that the wisest thing for me to do, or is that going to potentially harm my witness? Is that going to potentially harm the image that I have been responsible to bear? And so I think that in this specific context, I don't think it is an all encapsulating teaching or, instruction from Jesus to say, hey, yeah, you know what? No matter what happens to you, just always kind of lay down and subjugate yourself to whatever authority or power that is. Because again, if we're using, scripture to interpret scripture, looking at other parts of the Bible, I don't think that there's any other narrative in the Bible. I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot wiser biblical scholars than me. One of them being John Mark Comer, very influential in the church right now, and has been for years. And he considers himself kind of like an absolute pacifist, like pacifists over all ends. And I'm like, hey, you know what? That dude is definitely way more well-versed in the Bible than me. So I'm sure that he could make a really great argument of why it's necessary for Christians to be pacifists. But I have yet to see any sort of evidence of that being the steps that we're supposed to take as believers. Just because we're Christians, I should let evil happen to me or those around me.
Right.
And just because I love Jesus and I follow Jesus, I just kind of cower and hide away whenever, something bad or something oppressive comes my way. I think that that is an absolutely wrong way to interpret that scripture. And again, there's plenty of verses in the Bible that people just look at that single one. They're like, well, this, this proves what I want to believe. Somebody
Right.
doesn't want to be a fighter. Well, then they're going to obviously look to the Bible to try to make a case for themselves of why they shouldn't fight back. Just like I'm sure that I've made verses or I've taken verses to make the point of the opposite.
Yeah.
There's people that will do it the same way otherwise. But yeah, I don't think it's clear enough to say like, hey, yeah, anytime you have an oppressor, anytime that somebody wants to do harm or has ill will against you, just lay down, just take it, turn the other cheek. Because I think that there's more, and eventually there's going to be more consequences to that than there are benefits.
Yeah. Ernesto, you kind of said something like, well, getting slapped in the face or, minorly, whatever it is, isn't the same as someone breaking into your house and possibly threatening your life. Do you think that if it is something minor, like someone just comes up to you, slaps you in the face, stands back and just sees what you're going to do, or maybe throws a rock at your face for no reason, what do you think you would do in that situation?
Yeah, for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I can't just like make a rule for one scenario and then try to fit it into
Right.
something that just requires more context, and I think that that's where you kind of need to use wisdom and discernment in knowing how to respond appropriately. So there was a scenario. I was walking to one of my jobs, and this man was walking towards me, and I was on the phone talking to one of my coworkers, and this man that's walking towards me swings at me, and I just kind of put my head back, and it was a near miss, But then I turned around and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I thought, it's probably not wise to get into it with this guy.
Yeah.
And he's not coming at me, anymore. Like, I don't know why he did that. He probably has some mental problems or something. But if I can just walk away from this, I think that would be the wise choice, Now, if my family had been there, and if the scenario were a little different, my family's there, and it looks like maybe he does want to start something, or he does want to, harm someone, and that's going to put my family at risk, then I have to think through a different set of choices, a different set of consequences for the choice that I'm going to make it in that moment.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a big thing to consider is like, is it just myself that's at risk? And am I willing to take that risk for myself?
Mm-hmm.
Or are other people at risk? And is my action going to affect them as well?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I keep in mind a lot because I do have a family. You know, I have a young daughter, I have a wife, so
Yeah.
they're always in my mind. Like, how is this action going to affect them? How is me trying to get into it with this guy when I'm alone and he's really not trying to pursue anything
Mm-hmm.
and risking my own life or injury? How is that going to affect them? If I'm injured
Right.
and I can't work, then that's going to affect them.
Right. I feel like in that situation, it's really hard to have wisdom or self-control in that moment because a guy just swung at you and you're fine, but I'm sure your first instinct might be, all right, I'm going to like swing back, try to fight, protect myself. But it sounds like you're able to like analyze the whole situation and just be like, all right, he's not a threat. He was just like, I guess he was acting crazy, right?
Yeah.
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 That's good. Micah, what do you think about that? What I said before about if someone comes at you, swings, whatever it is, do you think that you would try to act according to that verse or something else that you might have seen in scripture, or even just how naturally you might act?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think I would think of the verse or the Bible at all in a scenario like that.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm just being real. Yeah, I think same thing with Ernesto. I've personally been in situations that, there were violent encounters with an individual that, a variety of them, where I was able to de-escalate a situation just by conversation and by being able to talk with somebody. There are situations that I was able to de-escalate it by avoiding physical contact enough to the point that somebody was able to just eventually calm down using, verbal de-escalation for something like that as well. And then I've been in situations where I've had to go hand to hand with somebody and make sure that they weren't a threat to me or the other people around me anymore. Subdue them in other ways, just by fighting, by, tying them up, whatever it might have been.
And then putting them in your basement or...
Share a story, dude. Come on, share a story that you can share.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there was just this one time that I had some roommates and there was a party that was going on at the place that we lived. And eventually there was just this one guy who was just not able to control, his consumption of alcohol and would kind of just get unhinged. And we were just there's a really stressful time, a lot of tests and other things going on. And so it was the weekend, everybody was just trying to get loose and stuff. And so then eventually this guy starts just swinging at, or, there might've been one conflict with him and somebody else, they bump each other, makes him drop his drink. And now there's a fight going. And then people try to calm him down. He starts swinging. There's just this big thing going on. And it's like, eventually it's like, what? At that point, am I going to turn the other cheek? And this guy's just now able to just punch everybody in the room because he's angry? No. Me and a couple of guys go and grab his arms, grab his legs, tie him up, tie him to a chair. We're like, dude, let's just let this kind of run its course. And, he's still freaking out. And then finally, he eventually calms down. We're able to just move on from the situation. So there's a situation like that. It's like, okay, if we're going to the extremes of applying scriptures like that of turn the other cheek, it's just like, I don't know if that really is in any sort of context the wiser choice to make there, or even the biblical choice to make there. And then there's been other situations too that maybe I was being foolish, and I was in a conflict with somebody over something totally dumb and minor, it's totally irrelevant, and then I don't choose to turn the other cheek. He offends me with his words, I offend him with mine. He pushes, I push back, and then now it turns into this brawl. We're fighting, and there's no good outcome that really is going to come from that. And so then, there's certain situations I probably should have used more wisdom. Certain situations I did use wisdom. Certain situations that really just, all of them are going to vary. There's so many different ways for, you to get into different conflicts in your life. And so I think that that's why it's like that can't be all inclusive for whether it's just me against somebody else or me and my family against somebody else, me and my friends against a group of friends or a group of other people. So yeah, I think that that verse alone has a very weak argument against never fighting back.
Got it. So then my next question with along these same lines for you guys, and this is something that I guess by starting this podcast and having this conversation, I started thinking about was, what about when it comes to the specifically getting persecuted for your faith? Is there a fight back there, or does that look different, or what does that look like? Because obviously we see, disciples and Christians getting persecuted throughout the Bible. What does that look like for you guys if you were to specifically get persecuted and attacked for your faith physically?
Physically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a good question.
I'm fighting back, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the disciples, they're being persecuted, and some of them are being martyred and killed. And I think that it does kind of depend on what the Lord is speaking to you, and what your convictions are. Do I think that it's my role and my place to become a martyr? Well, I hope not.
Yeah.
But they can martyr me even if I'm fighting back. So
True.
May the strongest survive.
Oh, man. Yeah, I wonder what it took to take down Peter.
Do you think he fought back? Or do you think you got me?
He probably grew some wisdom from, his time in Gethsemane with Jesus, where Jesus is like, yo, put that sword away. But I don't know. It's hard to see somebody who literally dedicated his whole life to fighting the power, being a zealot of the time. I'm like, do I think that somebody like that kind of just rolled over? Did he take maybe a couple Roman centurions or whoever was...
Peter had the last word because he was like, just crucify me upside down. And then they did.
Yeah. And then they did. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
He had the final say.
That's so based. It's like, I can't even be like Christ in this way. I am not honorable enough to be buried or to be crucified like Christ. So
that's hard.
So upside down. Burn me while you're at it, guys. Nice. That's tough. Do you think somebody like that didn't fight while they were knocking at his door? I don't know. We'll never know. I'll ask him. I'll ask him one day. Yeah.
What was the answer for you? Same as Ernesto?
Being persecuted. Yeah, I think that it just comes down to the situation. I mean, if I feel like God's given me a mission and he's given me a fight to fight, there's more that's included with that. I mean, what's at stake there? Is it my own discomfort and my, maybe, I'm in some foreign nation and my potential imprisonment? Am I now going to, fight the authorities and then be on the run, not be able to make it back to my wife and family? Or am I going to be like, okay, hey, you know what? Now's my time to, take up my call like Paul did. I sit in shackles for a bit and continue to be a light in this new dark place that I'm in. But yeah, I think that it's all going to be situational.
Yeah.
Persecution in America, I can only obviously speak to the context that I live in. Here, I think that we take our persecution for granted because our persecution is really nothing. I mean, I've personally been persecuted at a place of work because of my faith and because of, the decisions that I've made because of my faith, and I've seen it. But that's nothing, obviously, in comparison to what, we're currently seeing happening in Australia or China or other places in Europe or Africa, wherever it is around the world.
Right.
It's nothing in comparison. So I don't think that I really even have any sort of grasp on what real persecution looks like. But in people that I've talked to around the world that have been persecuted and that have suffered, or people that know people that have been martyred as well, I think it's really just situational. I mean, it's like, okay, how much do I fight? And who am I fighting back against too? Am I fighting against a group of street thugs in my neighborhood that don't like that they saw a cross hanging in my window or something like that? Or am I really fighting against some authoritative power that can then eventually hurt me and my family and the ministry that that I have been a part of? So I think it's situational, and really, hopefully, if and when one day I am persecuted, I will be able to, or not, hopefully I'm persecuted. Hopefully that if I am, I'll, be close enough and in tune with the Holy Spirit enough to really let him guide me in that part of my life. So,
yeah, I think that's the key is letting the Lord be the one that kind of guides your actions in that moment. Because we all have, of course, our flesh is going to say, do whatever to keep yourself safe. But that might not be what the Lord is saying, or he could be equipping you to fight and to overcome whatever that persecution is.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it comes down to what he wants.
So with all that we've said, all that we talked about so far, defending yourself, should Christians fight back if they're being attacked, all those things, the buzz question that I wanted to bring up is, should Christians own firearms?
Yes.
yes. Yes. Yes.
This is giving me like when you did the whole podcast with sunglasses on. That one.
Yes.
Or the rest of the 30 minutes, however long this episode is, you're just going to have that on.
Yes. I've had this on the whole time.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Got it.
Your situational awareness is lacking, bro.
Yeah, no. I need to go through some training. So should
Yes.
should Christians
Yes.
own firearms? Okay, why?
Yes.
Why should they?
Because you need firearms in order to use firearms.
Not taking this seriously right now.
Seriously, if you can give me a better way to protect my home and my family from a multitude of different types of threats, then I'm all ears. But when I think about all of the different things that could go wrong in society, could go wrong just within the walls of my home. When I think of all of the different people that wish harm on others within the walls of my home or even outside of that, what are they going to use? Firearms. Right. What do all armies in the world right now use to effectively combat other armies? Firearms. They use firearms. Firearms are just the most basic and efficient tool to use to, unfortunately, exhibit violence over others. And if somebody's coming into my home and they are going to harm my wife or my child, or they're going to harm me, the best way that I can stop them from doing that is by utilizing a firearm.
Christians should use firearms, and they should also own body armor. Absolutely. The why, same thing like he was just describing. All militaries use it, obviously to combat their enemies. And so we also, for the sake of this argument, if we are going to say, what protects us against evil in our modern society, okay, well, if that is a police force, what does that police force also use? They also use firearms to combat evil in our modern day society. Well, as somebody that also wants to be able to protect myself or the people around me and combat any evil that may perpetuate itself upon myself, my wife, my family, my friends, whoever it might be, whoever I surround myself with, I want to make sure that, I'm well prepared to face that threat. Because, if we look at if we look at the Bible and we see, again, this is a Christian podcast, so if we're going to bring it back there, the enemy is a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. That is speaking to sin, that is speaking to temptation, that is speaking to the reality of evil in this world, and how susceptible we may be as sheep, as lambs, as followers of Christ to a lion that is out to destroy us. And so I think that there are evils in this world that I want to be prepared. David had a sling. I have an AR-15. It rhymes, right? So,
I don't know if that did rhyme.
Yeah. What?
Sling 15, kind of. It's a little slant rhyme.
I don't know. If you put it in a song that Lil Wayne sang, you'd be able to make it rhyme.
Okay.
Anyways, I think that these are the ways that I'm able to protect myself, people around me, and I absolutely believe that it is something that Christians inevitably have to do. We are people that fight against evil in a spiritual sense, through our prayer life, through the reading of scripture, through the hands of healing, and different ways that we do that spiritually. But I think that we're also supposed to protect the innocent in a practical way too. And I think there are plenty. Just like I said, I feel like there is very few arguments for pacifism in the Bible and for being, that turning the other cheek aspect. I think there are far more and plentiful arguments to advocate for followers of God to be able to take up arms and protect others, to protect themselves. And obviously being able to protect others, I have to protect myself first. It's the whole putting on the, in an airplane, putting on the oxygen mask before, helping your neighbor and stuff. It's like, how am I going to help them? How am I going to help the old lady, who walked on the plane with a cane if I can't even help myself? Right. And so it's like, how am I going to protect others? How am I going to ensure their safety and to see that they could see the light of the next day if I'm not even there to do it myself? So, I think it's absolutely necessary. And I think all Christians specifically should.
As people who should defend those that are helpless.
Yeah, absolutely.
Help. It's good. So just by, looking at you can already see, if you're watching this on YouTube, maybe you're just listening. Oh yeah, I forgot. The audience that's listening, Mike is in like this full get up right now. So make sure you check out the YouTube video.
What do you mean?
Who's Micah?
Who's Micah?
What would you say to someone who is, the way that you are dressed right now makes them feel a certain type of way, makes them feel maybe even
like
nervous?
Turned on, like really?
Maybe, I don't know, but like someone that goes to our church, let's say, it could be anyone. Literally, I'm not calling out. I'm not even thinking of a specific person, but someone that goes.
Is it you?
Is it you?
No.
Is it
I'm
you,
making
bro?
you nervous?
No.
You get little butterflies?
So you're turned on.
What would you? What would you say to that person? Obviously, we did this just to have fun, to be
fun.
But also to show that this is what we got, and this is what we're working.
This is an option. Yeah.
This is an option. Yeah.
What would you say to that person that might feel a little nervous right now, listening, watching this?
Well, somebody that actually wanted to have a conversation with me, we could have a great conversation about the different ways that I protect myself, whether it's a mask, whether it is body armor, whether it is a pistol, whether it is a rifle, whether it is whatever it might be that I choose to defend myself with. We can pick those points apart and talk about them. I'm always willing to have a conversation about it, and I'm never going to try to tell you that this is the best way to do it. This is the way that I do it, and this is the way that I found it best to be able to protect myself and those around me. I can advise you on what I think would be best. There are certain aspects that I might tell somebody like, hey, no, you need to do this because of the situation that you're in, or because of the responsibility that you have. I would tell them like, hey, there are certain steps that you have to take to be able to protect yourself and protect others, and to just stop evil if you're ever faced with it. There's plenty of situations that I know of friends that have been totally unprepared for, plenty of situations that I myself have been totally unprepared for when it comes to people wanting to do harm against me. And all that ever makes me want to do is make sure that that doesn't happen again. And so I'll always advise people on what they need to do. Obviously, this may seem more intimidating than others, but I want to make sure that I am, as much as I can be, at the top of my game when it comes to the way that I protect myself. Because there's this quote, I'm not even going to get it right, but there's somebody actively preparing to do harm against somebody else. And so I want to make sure that I'm actively preparing to protect myself from that harm.
Yeah.
And so this is the way that I do it. It's like somebody wants to intimidate me. I'm going to make sure that I have the ability to intimidate them back, or to make sure that I'm not somebody that can be intimidated.
Right. Ernesto, what do you think about this? Someone that's really close to me always says this, and I hate the argument. What do you think about this quote? Or just someone saying this? Well, if you have a gun, someone could take that gun and use it against you.
Then you suck at using your gun, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is real.
Yeah, sure, that's a possibility.
Right.
And in that case, you suck at using your gun.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you even have a gun if you weren't going to use it to keep somebody from taking your gun from you?
Right.
Like, that's so silly. It's just like, it's so silly. Oh, somebody could steal that, Yeah, they could.
It's such a straw man's argument.
You can stop them from stealing it.
Yeah.
You literally have the power in your hands.
Or somebody takes your boot off your foot and beats you in the head with it. It's like, okay, it's the same. It's such a straw man's argument.
What if somebody stole your car and then ran you over with it? What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? There's more vehicular deaths than there are firearm deaths in America. So it's like, okay, so then what are you going to do? It's such a
What if somebody turned your stove on and they didn't turn it off and then your house burned down and you died inside your house? What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
But this is the thing too that I, myself and Ernesto have advised people of making sure that if you do have a firearm, if we're going to encourage you to have a firearm, tell you that as a man, and this specifically towards men, that I would give this advice, and especially men that are husbands.
Yeah, let me ask this question so we can set it up, because I think this is where you're going.
Okay.
Because this is one of the main arguments I feel like that you guys are gonna give that help me really see the perspective of why someone should own a gun. So this is a question: if there is a husband or a father who has a wife and kids, and they don't own a firearm, and they're watching this and listening to this podcast, what would you tell that man?
They're being irresponsible.
You need to start saving your money and buy a gun.
Yeah, they're just being irresponsible.
And then you need to learn how to use that gun.
Yeah.
And you need to learn how to keep people from taking that gun and killing you with it,
Yeah.
apparently.
Well, and that's step 2 that he just said of learning how to use it. I mean, it's like, you got to learn how to use it. You got to train with it. It's like you can buy a firearm. It's like, what good is that going to do for you if you don't know how to use it? It's a tool. It's a tool meant for war. It's a tool meant for violence, but it's a tool that needs to be learned how to use and learned how to use well.
Right.
And so, it's like, okay, I can have it taken from me. It's like, okay, what if somebody comes in my house and I, took NyQuil and I'm passed out? They come over, they grab my gun off my nightstand and, hurt me with it. It's like, okay, then they did. But I want to be as prepared as I can to make sure that something like that doesn't happen.
That's
I want
why
to make sure.
Your wife needs to be on watch. You just got to do shifts.
Yeah. So that's something that, me and my wife do. I sleep for 2 hours. She sleeps for 2 hours. I sleep for 2 hours. She sleeps. And then, eventually both of us will get 8 hours of sleep that night. But one of us is just watching the door with a flashlight, gun on the lap.
The way that you're saying this, people are going to think you're serious, bro.
That's
crazy.
Going back to something that you said about, like, well, what if somebody, sees the equipment and the gear that I might have and it makes them nervous, I think that's healthy. I think that you should be able to have a worldview and an awareness of what people have access to and what they have.
Right.
And the the scope of the violence that they can commit towards you and your family, towards your loved ones, the violence that they could commit in the public places that you frequent. And you should have a healthy understanding of that. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reason, why I would encourage people to also equip themselves. I trust myself to protect my family. So I'm going to equip myself to protect my family. I'm going to train with my equipment, and I'm going to make sure I know how to utilize it. I'm going to make sure I know how to use it in a way that's not going to harm the people around me that are innocent, but in a way that's effective to protecting my family.
Yeah.
And so, if seeing somebody in a mask wearing a plate carrier, with a rifle and a pistol, if that makes you nervous, you should be nervous. That should make you a little uneasy. And it probably makes you uneasy because you are ill-equipped to combat that. You're ill-equipped to combat that, and so you feel vulnerable. And it's because you are vulnerable. So you need to equip yourself to make yourself less vulnerable. Think about the disgusting events that have happened in the recent years with these school shootings. They always attack vulnerable places. They attack vulnerable people. They take advantage of that vulnerability, and they commit evil, heinous acts against them. And I don't want to be one of those vulnerable people, and I don't want my family to be vulnerable like that. So yes, I'm going to equip myself, and I'm going to make myself extremely hard to kill and extremely lethal towards bad guys.
Yeah. And I'll say it to literally any man, any husband.
Yeah. Really press into that, because I feel like that's a really good argument you guys have.
Any man, any husband. I mean, are you vulnerable or are you hard to kill? Is somebody that looks like me going to easily take advantage of you, or are you going to be able to protect yourself? Because the reality's there, and nobody ever expects it to happen to them. Nobody ever expects to get punched in the face while they're at church. Nobody ever expects, for their school to have a mass, violence happen at it. Nobody ever expects for any of these things, their home to be invaded or their car to get robbed while they're at a stop sign. Nobody ever expects those things, but it can happen to you, can happen to anybody. And I'm going to make sure that it does not happen to me, and it doesn't happen while the people that I love are with me as well. Because that's what it really comes down to, is I want to make sure that the people that I love are safe. But I also love others the way that I love myself. So if I love myself, I'm making sure that I'm safe too. I think, that men just have a duty to be protectors and to be providers. And so are you protecting your family? Are you providing for them? What kind of security or safety are you providing for them when, they might not feel safe walking in from their car that they had to park down the street all the way home? What kind of safety are you providing for them when, they hear these things on the news and they're just nervous about what may happen? What are you going to do at that point? Are you prepared? You're a man, and you're responsible for those around you. God has given you that great task, and it is a burden. And there are these things that might make you nervous and might make you think, and, you might feel a little bit uncomfortable with, but it's your duty and it's your responsibility to protect and provide for those that you love. And this is one of the ways that I do that. Another way I do it is I go to work. Another way that I do it is I read my Bible. Another way that I do it is I drink water. There's little things that I make sure of to take care of myself and those around me. This is just one of those things on the list.
Mm-hmm. He gets his prostate examined every year.
That's good, bro. That's
God.
Good.
I got to make sure.
Don't never have cancer.
Know. Make sure, dude.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I got to make sure.
A question that came up when you guys were talking.
Oh my gosh.
Unhinged. A question that came up while you guys were talking was that I've never asked you guys, I don't think, is how do you guys' wives feel about all of this whole conversation, basically, and owning firearms? Because I know that's a hesitation for a lot of husbands. Their significant other isn't okay with them owning a firearm or having a firearm in the house. What do you personally, How do you guys' wives feel about it? And if there is a story there where it's like they weren't with that at first, you know?
Yeah. It was, you know, it wasn't like my wife was just totally on board, you know, from one day to the next. It took some convincing and conversations and kind of talking through. And I had to articulate my reasoning. And I had to show her my arguments and tell her why I thought what I thought and the ways. What are you doing?
This is a podcast,
so
bro.
sorry.
We can hear all
I'm
this.
so sorry.
Sorry.
He's just freaking popping popcorn in his lap over there. So my wife took some convincing.
Yeah.
What?
You
Dude,
did it
that happened
again.
just from me moving. All right.
Okay.
But, you know, one thing that helped, unfortunately, was the pandemic and all of the civil unrest that was happening and going on. You know, like when you have the National Guard.
Old man Micah just cracking. He's
God,
not even moving. And somehow
I
he's
didn't
so
even
cracking.
do anything.
Sorry, National
You have
Guard.
the National Guard deployed, you know, blocks from your house, and people are on lockdown, and you really don't know what's going to happen. It's like, wow, I'm glad we have that gun. You know, I'm glad we have something to protect ourselves.
Right.
And people are going on social media, you know, naming your neighborhood and saying, let's go loot those houses.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I'm glad we have something to protect ourselves, you know, and I think it was, she had to open up her mindset a little bit, because, I mean, we do live in a relatively safe society, but that doesn't mean that you are safe.
It's relative.
It's relative. Yeah. You know, it doesn't mean just because there are police doesn't mean that there's going to be a police officer that is available to help you. You know, they could be somewhere else. They could be busy helping all the other people that need help.
Or protecting dead bodies.
Protecting dead bodies from, you know, whatever harms dead bodies.
Yeah.
I have to tell the story.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll try to summarize this quick story of one of the ways that my wife got more on board with it. I think that even still, she might be a little bit nervous and hesitant towards it. But there's been times that I haven't been home, and she is sure thankful that there is a 9mm, you know, handgun.
So she's equipped.
Yeah. So she's equipped as well. And so she is very thankful that there is a 9mm handgun on either side of her bed whenever I haven't been home. And there's been instances that we've gone camping or we're, you know, traveling in a dangerous neighborhood or different things like that. She's been very thankful because she knows what, you know, violence is out there. One of the instances that helped get her really on board was there was a night that we got a knock on my door. And we were living with my parents for a short time, and there was a night that there was a knock on the door, and my dad comes and knocks on my bedroom, and he's like, "Hey, it's 6-8, get up. Need you to come to the front door with me," and everything. And so obviously he's waking me. I look at the time, I'm like, okay, it's 12:30 at night. There's something weird going on. So obviously I grab my gun, get ready to go up to the front door with him. And there is, you know, a very obviously mentally disturbed person at our front door, 12:30 in the morning. This is the night before Easter. So it's just very out of the normal, obviously. Very weird. We can see that in one hand, she's holding a can of spray paint. We're just like, okay, what the heck's going on? My dad immediately calls 911. He's just like, hey, there's somebody at our front door. We don't want them to be here. And then he has a Ring doorbell, and she's basically describing how there was somebody chasing her and how, you know, she just doesn't feel safe. So she wanted to come up to the nearest house that the light was on in front of. So my dad's like, okay, well, you can wait on our front porch and you'll be safe there. And if anybody comes up to the front porch with you, we'll make sure that they don't hurt you, but you're not coming inside my house. And so, you know, we get up in the morning. My parents have to be up early for church the next day. And so I kind of just stay up, with this lady basically on the other side of the door from me. And I'm making sure that she's okay, or trying to talk to her. But again, she's very mentally ill. Night goes on. This is 12:30, maybe about 1 o'clock. She walks away from the door, and then she starts standing in the middle of the street under the light of a street lamp. And then she just starts screaming at the house, just staring at the house, screaming. Seemed totally creepy, something that you see out of horror movies and everything. And she's screaming at the top of her lungs, just staring at our house, totally still, screaming at the top of her lungs. And then my wife had gotten up because she heard these screams. She was like, hey, is everything okay? And then as the lady turns a little bit, we see that she has about like a 12-inch knife that she's holding in her other hand, opposite the spray can. So we're like, oh, wow. Well, now we're very thankful that we have this firearm. We called the police given at 12:30 in the morning. It took them until about 1:45, 2 o'clock to even show up to our house. So it was an hour and 15 minutes of us telling them that there was a woman at the door. And then we called them again. Half hour later, there's a woman with a knife at the door. There's a woman screaming with a knife at the door, and there was still no response. So an hour and a half later, there's no police presence. And so at that moment, I'm very, very thankful that I have this firearm with me. And then eventually, my neighbor somehow gets home late at 1 a.m. She starts walking towards him with the knife. I go out there with my firearm, make sure that she doesn't. She drops the knife and then runs away down the street. So it seemed like she was very willing and ready to do harm against other people. Nobody expects that to happen. I didn't invite that to happen to me, but thankfully I was prepared enough that I was able to protect myself, my father, my mother, my wife, and then now also my neighbor from potential harm that could have come to them. And so my wife, even in that aspect, she was extra thankful that, we were safe and protected, so that even if this lady started breaking our windows or trying to kick down the door, whatever happened, she was going to be safe in that moment. So, I mean, there's conversations like he talked about the pandemic, conversations like this that nobody ever really thinks of or prepares for. But going back to the thing I was saying, it's a man's duty to prepare for these things, to make sure that those people around them feel safe and secure.
Wait, why did it take the police an hour and 15 minutes to come to your house?
They're protecting a dead body. That's what the 911 dispatcher said. There was a murder in our city, and so all of the
I've heard the story. I didn't know that part.
Yeah. And so that's what they tell me. And so
wow.
For anybody that has heard about my critiques about a local police force, this is one of those things that helps sell that for me as well.
Any last thought with the last 60 seconds that we have that you want to tell anyone that might be listening to this
Buy
podcast?
a firearm, train with it, and protect your family, protect your household, protect yourself, because you have a responsibility and a duty as a man of Christ to protect those that are innocent and to fight against the evils in this world that may want to cause harm to you or the people that you love. So make sure that you're prepared. Don't be vulnerable. Be hard to kill.
Don't be easily killable.
It's good. It's a good way to end it. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave a comment. DM either me or Micah. And if you find Ernesto's number somehow, you can text him.
Yeah. Find me at church. Let's talk about it.
What was it?
1-800-HOT-BODY.
Okay. Love you guys. Bye.